This is Emanuela, 19 years old, the second daughter of 5 children. She was in her first year of a secretariat studies program at a local polytechnic in Imo State, southeastern Nigeria. She had friends, she had plans, she knew what she wanted her life to look like in 5 years, and she was building towards it, one semester at a time. She was not a troubled girl. She was not someone her family worried about. She was simply a young person at the beginning of the life she was building for herself, and she started having these severe headaches. Then the fever came, high temperature, weakness, days in bed when she should have been in class. Her family took her to a clinic. They gave her medication. The medication helped briefly, and then the fever returned. 3 weeks of this back and forth, the clinic, the medication, the brief relief, and then the return. Now put yourself in her mother's position for just a moment. 3 weeks of watching your daughter suffer. 3 weeks of medication that is not holding. 3 weeks of not knowing what is wrong or what it will end. And in this situation, Emanuela's aunt extended a hand. Her aunt was her mother's younger sister, a devoted member of a white garment congregation in their community. Now this is the prophet, Prophet Stevens. He had been in that community for over 20 years. He wore white always, white robe, white cap, a wooden staff, no shoes inside the compound. He told his followers that the ground was holy, and shoes were an insult to what God had consecrated there. He had a reputation of seeing things, the type that happens when a man looks at you for a long moment and then says something specific about your life that he should not have been able to know. That reputation, as you can see, was his most powerful tool. The aunt went to the prophet and told him about Emanuela's condition, and he did not ask to examine her. He did not ask for medical records. He simply said, the enemy in that household is simply using the girl's body as a doorway. He told her that the fever is not medical, and if they do not bring her for deliverance, the enemy will succeed. The aunt brought this message to Emanuela's mother, and frightened, exhausted, trusting her sister, trusting the prophet her sister trusted, she agreed. Now Emanuela was told she was going to the prayer camp for a few days, a week at most, to receive prayers for her healing. She packed a small bag. Remember, she was 19 years old, and she would not come home for 4 years. When Emanuela arrived at the compound, she was still thinking in days and weeks. The prophet received her with calm and authority. He walked around her slowly. He looked at her for a long time without speaking. In that moment, when someone looks at you with that kind of focused certainty, something in you begins to believe they are seeing something real. Then he said, "What is in you has been in your family for 3 generations. Your grandmother made an agreement that was never broken, and you are paying the price." He told her the deliverance would take time, that she must stay in the compound and submit to the process completely. Emanuela told her family that she understood, and then within the first 2 weeks, the fever began to subside. Now you need to understand what that moment meant. The medication from the clinic had not broken the fever consistently, but 2 weeks at the prayer camp, and it was lifting. Put yourself in her position. You are 19 and you have been sick for over a month. You are away from home for the first time in your life, the fever that nothing else has touched is finally going away. If it were you, what would you conclude? As most of us would conclude in that moment, she believed. She called her mother and told her she was improving and she would stay a little longer. Her mother thanked God, and her aunt wept with relief. What none of them knew, what Emanuela herself did not know, was that the fever had simply run its natural course. 3 to 4 weeks was its cycle. It would have subsided whether she was at the camp or at home in her own bed. But the timing made it look like a miracle, and miracle in that environment transfer authority completely. From that moment, Emanuela stopped questioning the prophet. Now, gradually, the rules began to change. The way things changed when someone is being careful not to move too fast. At first, she was free to move within the compound, make phone calls, and receive visitors. Family came on Sundays, stayed with her in the open courtyard. She told them she was fine. She believed she was fine. Then the prophet told her that phone calls were interfering in her deliverance, that the voices from people in her old life were keeping her connected to the very thing that needed to be broken. So the calls became weekly, then monthly, and then only when the prophet permitted. Visitors were told she was in an intensive period of prayer and could not be disturbed. The family accepted this because this was a man of God, because he had healed their daughter's fever, and questioning him felt everything like questioning God himself. You see, when faith and fear combined in the same person at the same time, the ability to ask questions becomes almost impossible. And then came the threat that locked everything in place. The prophet called Emanuela into a private section. He looked at her for a long time, and then he said, "The deliverance is progressing, but something in you is still resisting, and I need you to understand what happens if you leave before the deliverance completes. It will not return to you. It will go to your siblings, your brother, and your sisters. If you walk out of this place before I release you, you are signing their death warrants." By this time, she had spent a year in the prayer camp. She was 20 years old. Imagine if you are her in that moment. You already believe this man healed your fever. You already believe he can see into your bloodline. You already believe there is something in you that is real and dangerous. And now he is telling you that the price for your freedom is your siblings' lives. As much as everything in her wanted to go home, she stayed, not because she was weak, but because she loved her brother and her sisters more than her own freedom. That is a 20-year-old girl being handed an impossible choice by a man who knew exactly what he was doing. This is the part of Emanuela's story that she finds it hardest to speak about. And I want to honor that difficulty by telling it carefully. You see, there were periods triggered by what the prophet called spiritual crisis. Moments when he said the demon inside her was becoming violent. When she was moved to a smaller room at the back of the compound, a room with a lock on the outside, she was told this was for her protection, that in the state she was in, she could harm herself and others without knowing it. She was in that room for days at times, sometimes longer. And as much as I want you to feel the horror of that room, I want you to understand something more disturbing than the room itself. There was this fasting that was imposed on her. 3 days without food, then a meal. 2 days without, then a meal. It was during this period that something horrible and bad was done to her. Remember, she was told that there was a demon inside of her that was becoming violent. At a night, something will enter the small room that she had been kept, and before she knows it, she will feel weak, and by the time she gains conscious, she will realize someone or that thing that entered the room had taken advantage of her. She told the prophet about what was happening, and he said it was the demon that was also fighting for a space in her life. It went on for several times because anytime she will be in that small room, the said demon will come and have its way with her. But strangely, it never came when she was with the other girls in the main room. Now in this camp, they were woken at 2 in the morning for prayer section, 4 in the morning. The interrupted sleep sustained over months does something to a person's ability to think clearly, to trust their own perception, to remember who they were before. And as time went by, she began to forget the polytechnic, the friends, the plans, the girl who had packed a small bag for a week. She began to believe, genuinely believe, that she was as dangerous as the prophet said she was, that she was protecting her family by staying, that the prophet, whatever she felt about him in her darkest moment, was the only thing that is standing between her and something that would destroy everything she loved. This is what sustained confinement, dressed in spiritual languages, does to a person. It does not break the body, it rebuilds the mind in the image of the captor, and by the time it is finished, the cage does not need walls anymore because the cage is inside her. You see, by the 4th year, Emanuela had stopped counting days. She had stopped asking when. She had stopped feeling the difference between the locked room and the open courtyard, because the open courtyard had just become a large version of the locked room. She performed the prayers. She fasted when instructed. She attended the prophet's sessions. She helped with tasks in the compound. And this is the part of Emanuela's story that disturbed me most. I want to stay with you for a few more minutes because I do not think it is enough to tell you what happened to Emanuela and then simply ask you to share the video. I think we need to talk about what this story actually means, not just for her, for all of us. There are prayer camps and deliverance houses operating right now across Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, and every country where the church has deep roots in the community. Some of them are genuine. Some of them are led by people who sincerely believe in what they are doing. I am not here to condemn every prayer house that has ever existed, but I'm here to say something clearly that the church has not been saying loud enough. A man of God who removes your phone is not protecting your deliverance. He is protecting himself. Think about what the prophet did. He did not need chains. He did not need guards at the gate. He needed 3 things. 1. A fever that broke at the right moment to make him look like God. 2. A family that loved their daughter so much that they could not imagine that the man they trusted with her was the danger. And 3. 1 sentence. If you live, your siblings will die. That is all it took. 1 sentence spoken to a 20-year-old girl who loved her family, and that sentence held her. This is not unique to Emanuela's story. This is the architecture of every spiritual trap that has ever been built. Find the person's deepest love. Find what they would sacrifice anything for, and tell them that their freedom is the price someone else will pay. That is not God speaking. That is a man who has studied human vulnerability and learned how to use it